Good morning, Super.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning, James.
Okay, so we had a little break in our in-studio podcast because I went out on the field and did some recording out there. So that should be available for everyone soon. So today I thought we just maybe talk about a pretty interesting topic that I feel like it deserves more attention and more time than this that we're going to give it, but there's never a better time than now, and there's never a better method than just to get it out.
All right.
Okay, so today what I thought I'd talk about is what's better for people in our industry. Is it being a union, working in a union like the 32 BJ, and working full-time, part-time, and most likely full-time? Or is it better to work as a part-time super? And part-time, for those of you who are not familiar with what a part-time super does, it's someone that is, instead of working 9 to 5, 5 days, 40 hours a week, they're kind of more entrepreneurial in picking and choosing their customers, working the time that they want, like the hours that they choose, making their own price, so determining their own value, asking for their own value, planning their own financial road, on and on. So, yeah.
So they're like freelancers.
Like freelancers, right?
And contractors.
Contractors, right. Exactly. So I've had questions as to which is better. We've had, mostly, actually, people from different stages of being a super, just starting, getting their first building, or having been in the industry for a long time. The question often becomes like, what's better? What works out better? What's cooler? Not what's cooler, but what's better. I guess people have different ideas of what better is. Sometimes it's about money. Sometimes it's about security, job security. Sometimes it's about freedom. So, there's some people that just love their freedom, and they don't want a 9 to 5. They don't want to work 40 hours a week. They want their own. They want to do things at their own time, and that's worth much more than, any kind of, financial benefit or reward. So I thought we'd go into that today.
Yeah.
So, how should we approach this?
First of all, what kind of jobs are there? Like W-2, part-time, full-time?
Yeah. Oh, you mean generally, yeah, W-2, part-time.
So W-2 is usually full-time, right?
W-2, no, it could be part-time too.
It could also be
it could also be
part-time?
part-time. W-2 just means that you're in a employer-employee relationship,
Right.
and that the employer is withholding taxes, your income taxes, and is responsible for certain other taxes that the government charges, and you get a portion of your check every week, or every time you get a paycheck. It's a portion of the gross to complete, because they're holding it to pay the government.
Okay.
Versus 1099, which is a freelancer.
I see. So, in a broad spectrum, there's W-2 and 1099, right?
Right.
And in W-2, is 32BJ always W-2?
Yes.
Okay, 32 BJ is always there. Most of the full-time jobs are there, and some part-time jobs can be W-2 as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think after a certain time or number of hours per quarter, for like a financial or calendar quarter of a calendar year, I forgot what the rules were, but you're supposed to be you've developed a employer-employee relationship
I see, and there's 1099,
automatically.
which has no 32 BJs, 1099. Maybe we should begin about talking about 32 versus 1099.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Just
and-
32 W-2 versus 1099 in general. Okay.
Maybe some of the differences,
I think I might need an accountant for this.
but yeah, but we won't get into details since we're not giving law advices or tax advices.
Yeah,
Advice.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think we know enough to kind of help a friend.
Yeah, so
But-
this is kind of like a
Yeah,
casual talk
Yeah.
about it. So let's talk about W-2 versus 1099.
Okay.
So as you said, it's about the tax with withholding, the employers withholding the tax.
Yeah. So basically, you work a certain you work a certain number of hours, and the employer holds a portion of your money that you've earned, and pays the taxes, your part of your income taxes and other sort of taxes that are required by the government. Generally, if you're in a W-2 frame, I call it the framework, your regular hours is 40 hours. So 40 hours is considered regular hours of work, where anything over, you're considered working overtime over that hours. So this is I guess it's a special relationship between two people, one person working for the other, where you have that person that's working allowed to work up to 40 hours with a regular pay. And then after that, the employer is required to pay time and a half for that. The assumption is that you're going to be telling them what to do. You're going to be controlling their behavior. You're going to be giving them rules that they have to follow. You're going to be dictating ways that they have to work, determining the standard of care that they have to show in their work.
So
And
in other words, they have a lot of demand, or
yeah. I mean, not necessarily a lot of demand, but
they can tell you what to do.
specificity. Yeah, they have a control. They have a they're usually controlling every aspect of your work. When you come in, when you clock in, when you clock out, when you have lunch, stuff like that. So that's what the government considers to be behavior that puts you in an employer-employee W-2 relationship with them.
I see. Whereas 1099 is independent contractor.
Yeah, if I recall it correctly, I things could have changed year to year, but a 1099 is left to his own devices. He's left to buy his own tools. He makes up his own hours of work. He sets his own standards, his quality, his standards of service or performance. He is responsible for everything that he needs to get the job done, and he charges back to the person who's hiring him. And there's many other rules that will tell the government whether you fall under a W-2 or a 1099 status. you know? Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's the government that decides, not you.
Yeah, I've seen some articles about Uber and Lyft about the 1099 versus W-2, and I think it differs from state to state as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think majority of a lot of the states that have put together rules like this are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I think they can differ state to state, and I think that's part of the reason why some states may be interpreting these rules harsher for the employer in some states. So the employer is under tighter restrictions. Generally, most of the building industry, especially when you're dealing with, particularly when you're dealing with like larger buildings with a full staff,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be under a W-2
I see.
status.
Okay. So what about workers' comp? Workers' compensation?
Right, right. Workers' compensation is something that the employer is responsible for.
I see.
So generally, the W-2 person doesn't have to worry about that. That's covered by the employer. Unions came in because of as there were more people available to work, but less jobs out there. Of course, your wages are going to go down.
Yeah, everyone's gonna be competing. Oh, I can do it for $10. Oh, I can do it for $5.
Right. There was a race to the bottom when it came to salary, and I guess, and the benefit was to the employer
Right.
who was able to get cheap labor.
Yeah, and then the employees get injuries.
Right, right.
And so stuff like that. So to protect
Yeah,
the workers.
if they're injured, it's easy to replace them, and there's little cost to the employer, and all of those protections, I'm sure, came in to help bring in the unions into the picture. But I think the questions are more from, let's say it's a person from the field, right? He's getting started.
Right.
His question's more going to be, what's better for me if I'm coming into the industry or I'm starting out? Is
Yeah,
it better?
but if I'm starting out, I have to know if I have to even purchase insurance or not.
Right. If that's the case, because you're right, you not only have to purchase insurance, technically going to be under a requirement to purchase like home improvement license, depending on at least a home improvement license, and then these days you have to go get a lead renovators license or certificate. So there's a host of costs that comes with a 1099. So I think the question that's questions that's asked of us, or that people have asked us, is in general, what can I do better in the long run? Should I join? Should I look to join the industry as a 32 BJ W-2 on a W-2 relationship, or should I be going out and getting these part-time buildings? Where should I spend my time on getting? And I think when you look at it as W-2 and 1099, there's going to be a lot more work that you have to put in as a 1099. As a freelancer, you have to pay your own taxes, you have to get your own insurances. That will include workers' comp, and you also have to pay, I think 1099 has some additional additional things that the government asks for.
Mm-hmm.
So, like in a W-2, the employer will pay that portion, that additional.
Yeah.
But in a 1099, now the government is asking the 1099 worker, independent contractor, to pay that. So there are different things, and then of course you have to get licenses and certificates that are required by the state. So in a way, I see where you're going. You're saying, what are the total costs here, right? There's government issue. You're focusing on government government expenses that are required by the government. And you're saying in the W-2, I don't have to pay that because everything's covered.
Right.
And so that's money that I save versus if you go out as a 1099, now I have all these other things, insurances, licenses, and all that stuff. So there's a clear difference there. And I think it's good to know that. Of course, it's going to be, you fundamentally, if you're starting out, you are going to have to understand the fundamental differences between the two in terms of how the government will want to collect from you. At the base, how much you pay in taxes, how much additional costs go out in insurance, because you also need business liability. If you're going to be a 1099 contractor, technically you should have business liability insurance as well, to cover yourself. You guys, other freelancers have that, right?
Not so sure.
Not so sure. I think if you are required, like some buildings, if they say, okay, you're going to be considered a 1099 contractor, and in case you get hurt, I don't want to have my premium increased because of you.
Right.
So I want you to get business liability. Now you're thinking about, oh my God, now I have to get workers' comp, business liability, licenses, and it becomes a big expense. And more than the expense, it becomes a big headache. And then you have to start to say, okay, if I'm going to have to do that, should I just incorporate myself and create a company? And then if I create a company, now I need an accountant to do that. Now I have to do taxes for myself as an individual. And then I have to do taxes for my company. And it becomes a big thing. So I think maybe what the porter who asked me that question wants to know is they want to know, like, all right, so let's say I pay more as a 1099. Let's say I create a company, or I don't create a company. Let's say I say that what are the benefits? Like, what are the pros and cons of working in a union versus working out there? Like, what can let's just take, because there's different aspects. Like, of course, there's how much more can I make, but the other is how much more freedom do I get doing this? Can I take time off whenever I want to as a 1099 versus W-2? And the answer is yes. If you have your own business and you're doing things yourself, you can take off, decide that, I don't want to be here, or I don't want to wake up at 8, I want to wake up at 10 or 11 today, or my son's birthday, or soccer games at 12, can I find a way to go around it? And you can. In 32BJ, you're going to be more stuck, because aside from the days off that they give you, you generally have to be at work at a certain time, right?
You're required of many things.
Yeah, so you're kind of stuck in this pros and cons of things that may be more important than money to you.
Yeah, I think it would depend a lot on someone's lifestyle or someone's character as well.
Exactly. And I think that's what these, the guys that are just starting out, that's what they're wanting to know. Because if you're going to make a lot of money from one area over the other, the expenses of insurance and all those things are not important, because you're going to be making much more to cover that. But it's the freedom that they may be going for, freedom and the money. So that, I think that's where we may have to kind of look into now, because 32BJ is I think it's a great union. It gives 10 days sick day. It gives, I think, a couple days of clinic days where you can go to the doctor, days off. It gives you 2 personal days. It gives you vacation, like starting vacation, and after you've been with them for a while, You can get 5 weeks of vacation. That's a month, over a month of vacation per year. Unheard of, right?
Paid, right?
Paid, yeah. Health insurance. You get, no matter, you have 20 kids have health insurance. If you have, you buy a house, they pay for the attorney's fees. If you have a spouse or a family member that you want to bring over, immigration, and you need to pay for an immigration attorney, they'll take care of that.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is, and if you want to learn more, there's tons of great classes that they teach. So there's obviously like big benefits to working for the union. And I often, when I see the guys, they're taking their vacation, I see the difference between the guy who's 1099 part-time super and the the 32 BJ W2 employee. I see how there's a difference in how easily someone can go on vacation. It's often harder for the guy that's on his own. But there's a cost with that, right? The cost is that, what would be the cost? They're stuck at 40, they're stuck in a work cycle. So if they've used up that time, that vacation time and all that stuff, they're pretty much having to count their days, right?
Yeah.
And your health is capped. Your number of hours is capped at 40 hours, because there's sometimes buildings don't want you to do OT because of the time and a half. So they'll restrict the number of hours. They'll be watching very carefully the number of hours that you work per week. So let's say you are a young, you're sort of a go-getter, and you need these extra hours, and you want to make extra money, and you don't have people that rely on these benefits, it becomes questionable, because your salary is capped. Generally, there's a set rate for a handyman, for a porter, and that's usually what they give. So if you want to make double that per hour, you can't. You're kind of stuck there, and then unless you work overtime.
Okay, so it seems like it has amazing benefits, but in terms of growth, although they have great classes, salary-wise, you're restricted.
Right.
And yeah, that's a big thing, that you're capped in certain salary, and also having to work with other people. If you're if you're a person who likes doing things your way,
Right.
then this might be hard for you.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Especially if you want to do. There's a story. I'm not going to name names. I think this guy is great. He's really an amazing person. But when he first started working in a union position,
Mm-hmm.
he was coming in. He was excited. He wanted to do more, and he was kind of running around and excited. And then someone said, "Yo, you're making us look bad. Slow down."
Exactly, like those things.
And the funny thing was that this guy is amazing. I mean, he's just so skilled and so knowledgeable. But a lot of that was in this environment where you have this very set standard of how you should perform and get paid. That I feel like that was wasted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they want that. I'm not saying that this is how they want it. This is exactly how they want people to act. No, but there may be an unintended consequence
Oh yeah.
to this environment, right?
And
It's
politics.
unintended. Yeah, we don't want to. It's not like they want this to happen. The union's kind of creating this environment where purposefully doing this, and
But it's just the fact that it's a group setting.
it's a group setting, and this is, and there's a certain, there's a, the primary goal is to protect the the um, the employee, right, from abuse. And I think this is something that's unintended. And this is, I don't have an answer to this, but unfortunately, it's kind of like overtime, right? Overtime was put by the powers to be to prevent abuse by employers. Like, so if you're working 80 hours a week, right, the government steps in and says, whoa, you can't do that. This is a human being who has family. You owe him more money if he's gonna go over 40 hours, right? But what's the drawback of that, and what the unintended consequence of that is that now, because of that extra expense that is required to be paid to the employee that's working over 40 hours, buildings and employers stop their workers from working overtime.
Yeah, but they're going to be hiring a 1099 to do the work.
Well, I don't know about that. Maybe
it could be, it could be.
Possibly. But in the 32BJ, maybe they'll hire not a 1099, but they'll hire another group of temporary workers to work that additional hour if they need to. And then the person who's there, the full-time employee won't get his chance to work additional hours. And that kills that feeling of wanting to be a go-getter, the interest in working more hours. And it's not, there's a pro and con. I don't have an answer or an alternative
there is no answer.
Framework, but those are exactly what I'm talking about when I say unintended consequences, where something that's intended to be good actually creates a perverse consequence.
Yeah, it's just two sides of the coin. You could feel safe and secure, but it might be boring, it's repetitive, and you might feel stuck.
Right.
You're stuck there forever. So it's just how you see it.
Right. But I mean, on a positive note, right? You get all these. The union has created and fought for all of these awesome benefits. All of these vacation, sick days. Health insurance is so expensive, yet they're covered. And job security, you can't be terminated. It's difficult to terminate someone that's in the union. You have to make sure that you jump through all these hoops to do so.
Oh wow, then it means people that I'm working with in this 32BJ building, I'll be working with them until I retire or they retire. Almost.
Yeah.
Man, if you have
a person you don't like to work with?
Yeah, man, that's getting really hard.
You could do other things to get rid of him. But look, I agree with you. I'm totally kidding. It's people that hear the podcast won't see me going like this on camera, so they won't see the Dr. Evil finger kiss.
Technical difficulties.
No, they were excited by the Dr. Evil finger kissing. What do you call this when you tap your fingers together in a way that suggests that you're scheming something, planning something evil? But okay, so going back to it, I think what we understand is that now that we've seen it, we start to talk through this. There's job security in being in the 32BJ. Right. You can't. Firing is harder. Termination is harder, right? And also your salary is I mean, there was a study done where it said that your union jobs are typically 20% more than non-union jobs, because there are actually W-2 non-union jobs out there. Those, I would imagine, the employees are far less happy because they most likely are not getting the large benefits of a 32 BJ position, yet they're still working in that 32. So, you know, you cap that, the negative things that come with that, right? You can't work more than 40 hours, and your salary is capped. Most likely your salary is lower than 32 BJ. So you're getting the negative stuff without the positive stuff.
Who knows? You might be getting more salary.
No, usually they're not. I think
Usually
that
they're not?
yeah,
Okay.
usually they look to convert to a union
I
building.
see.
But yeah, unfortunately you got the short end of the stick over there.
Okay.
Okay,
But if you're a person who prefers that stability, then one might choose this W-2 non-union position rather than choosing a freelance 1099 position, part-time super
yeah,
position.
I mean, look, it's a great. You mean you were saying that it's still better in a lot of ways than a 1099 position?
If someone is looking for
If someone, yeah,
a stable job.
yes, and also, well, there are basic employee labor protections for employees. So yeah, I think you are protected, not this time, not by WBJ, but by New York State
Right.
government. But you would, and also it could be a launching pad if a building is becoming a union, or if you are looking to go into a union position and you're looking to show that you've been stable in that, you know, in that kind of working environment, because it shows that you've been diligent, it shows that you've been committed
Right.
and loyal, it shows a seriousness to your, it shows a side of seriousness to your work ethics. If you're able to, you know, if you're able to be somewhere and working steadily 40 hours a week. So other jobs will appreciate you for that. And so you can most likely find your way in those positions a little easier than if you're just coming off
It
the
can be a
street.
stepping stone.
Great stepping stone, yeah. So, okay. So this is also the other thing. Having W-2, no matter what, is better if you're trying to buy a house and get a mortgage or a loan.
Right.
So
That's so true.
W-2, no matter what, whether it's union or non-union, it shows the banks or people that you're borrowing money from.
You have a steady income coming.
Yep. So that's a great plus as well. Versus a 1099. I think 1099 is a tough position, a tough place to be. The only way that I can see this working for you is if you're able to make a lot of money per hour.
Mm-hmm.
So what's a lot of money per hour? As a 1099, if you're able to get, you're only restricted by your own perseverance, or your own, you're only restricted by your own imagination or your own diligence, right? So if you feel like you can make more money out there, and you are sure of your own capabilities, and you can command more money per hour, which means that you're no longer making the cap rate set by 32 BJ of, let's say, 25 or 22 per hour, but you're able to make 45 or 50 per hour or more. That's when you can really just think of 1099 as your own business and really prosper from there. So the pros is that you can actually make much more money per hour.
Right.
You can pick your own hours. Now you can start, I mean, it might be a lot of work in the beginning, because as with any business, you spend a lot of time in the beginning planting your seeds. And once you plant your seeds and the plants start to grow, that's when you can start to lay your hands off of them. I guess if you're willing to do that, put the time in, grow yourself, become more business oriented, learn salesmanship, and learn all the stuff that it takes to to win over customers, then you could be making a lot more per hour. And I'm not even going to go into, I don't even have to go into that point where you feel successful and confident to open a company and to run, you know, a crew by yourself, you know. But if you're, even as a individual 1099 independent contractor, if you're able to, you know, the word hustle, where you're able to go out and chase those jobs, you can make more per hour. Because if you're able to do a snaking job, right? Let's say you're charging $60 per hour, right? Or I'm sorry, let's say you're charging $60 for a snaking job or a plunging job, and it takes you 15 minutes to do it. You've made at $60 per 15 minutes, you've made $240 per hour, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have 4 jobs, let's say in the same building, and you're able to charge that, and each takes 15 minutes, you've made $240 per hour. Mm-hmm. If you're able to be creative and put jobs together where you're able to charge, you know, let's say a fixed rate that's similar to the snaking job or the plunging and toilet job, then you're able to make so much more per hour. Mm-hmm. So let's break it down. So you've made it $60 per 15 minutes of work, and you're able to do more work in that hour to make a similar rate. That's clearly surpassing a W-2 job, W-2 rate that you're able to get, right? W-2 rate is 22 to 25 per hour, maybe 27, 28 per hour. As a resident manager or super, you're making much more, so you really have to do the math. As an RM, though, I guess the great thing is that you do get an apartment too, right? Mm-hmm. And you get other benefits that come with that. So the trade-off is that you're able to get an apartment, you're able to get these other benefits. The downside is that you're kind of stuck with your building. Emergency calls, having to take care of emergency calls, you're kind of grounded, or mm-hmm. Can you? Okay. So 1099, the benefits are you can pick your own hours. Your hourly rate is not capped at something that someone else decides. You can make more per hour by being strategic with your planning of work and having more skills to do this type of work, and commanding a higher value per hour, right? To translate that into higher rate. You're no longer capped by OT. You can work 100 hours a week if you want to. You can work 100 hours a week, or you can work 40 hours a week, or you can work 20 hours a week, or 10 hours a week. So it really depends upon how you set it up. So that's another benefit that you have by working on your own as an independent contractor.
And you get to be your own boss.
You get to be your own boss. You also develop, as your own boss, you develop, you know, it's tough to go on your own. It's scary. Because you don't know where your next
phase is, or
next job. Yeah, next job is. You don't know where your next customer is. So there's a different type of mindset that you have to develop.
Yeah, and it's also risk.
Learn how to accept more risk for yourself, which is not for everybody, right? So that's a great point. That risk. Facing risk is one of the most stressful things for a human being to take on, and if you're just not built for that, that's okay. You know, but maybe a W-2 employer-employee relationship or a W-2 job is something that you should go for.
But if you're adventurous,
then by all means, yeah.
Yeah, and you just want to grow more. In terms of growth, I would say 1099 has more possibilities or more various ways to grow, different ways to grow. Yeah, in terms of leadership, as you mentioned,
Right.
meeting different people, you get to meet more of a variety of people than compared to a W-2 job setting.
Right.
No, it just depends on what kind of person you are, I think.
Yeah, and if you add on to the to what you just talked about, the benefits of looking for part-time building positions is that you get to develop a larger customer base.
Yeah.
You get to add more buildings to what you can take on. You're able to get these jobs because in a larger professional setting, you probably have to get resumes together, you have to go through interviews, but smaller buildings, part-time buildings, you're able to be hired depending on how well you perform at the interview, and you're able to provide some sort of credentials or knowledge that you have. And of course, if you're a resident manager down the street, that's all the credentials that you need.
Mm-hmm.
You just tell them that you're a resident manager, and that building will love you because
Right.
you already are vetted and you're screened, and you've proven your worth to them and your value, and so they're able to pick you faster in a part-time building. Right. And they respect your time more. I think part-time buildings, the reason why a lot of people are able to take on part-time buildings is because smaller co-ops, smaller boards, where you're not living in them, they know that you're a part-time super. They know that you have other things going on.
Mm-hmm.
They know that they're not the priority. So they tend to respect your time a little bit better, I would say. And they're more careful to call you out, especially because you're going to charge for it.
Right.
Right? So
Right,
they're going to say,
exactly.
yeah, and it's great because you give them a choice. You give the buildings a choice and a more pleasing budget alternative for them at the end of the year. So it's great to do that. You also have, I think payment options are more flexible, right? In the W-2 framework, you're able to you get your check every week. That's your check, right? In the other case, you can change it. You can say, I want it once a month. You want it at the end of the year if you want to try to avoid your taxes. I don't know. I can't say to that. But cool thing is that you get to be flexible with your, you can even say, hey, if you're, if you don't want to take me on as a W-2, and I'll be glad to do it as an independent contractor. Can you do it at a higher, pay me a little bit more to cover
Exactly.
my expenses? So there's a flexibility with that versus a larger building they're more restricted by a budget, becomes more formalized and professional in that way. So smaller part-time buildings become more flexible, much more flexible in terms of how they can pay you, how they can help you deal with your schedule conflicts or scheduling. They can be more accommodating to your needs. They know that once again, that they're not the priority, so they will work with you on a good schedule. So it just means that you're able to take on more stuff. It means that you're able to take on more, more projects and make more money. And so that's a huge plus. But I would even go so far, though, to say maybe you should, when we make this analysis, it all depends upon who you are. Like if you're a 23-year-old single guy, and you have this entrepreneurial drive and you can take risks as you don't have kids and you don't have a wife, then you may not want that 32 BJ position. You may want to go out there and test the waters.
Yeah, and explore.
Explore.
World is out there.
Yeah, and also you can take on other building. There's a lot of buildings that give live-in superpositions, but they're not exactly the apartment that is great. You know, it may be a one bedroom or studio. You can take those, you know, and then test them there as well. But if you're maybe if you're in your 30s or late 30s and you have a lot of children, you have several children or multiple children, and because time off with those kids are important, and
just want to settle down.
you settle down and you need that insurance, health insurance, the 32 BGA position becomes much more attractive because it's secure, you know, you want something secure, you have people depending on you. So it depends. So if you have, so I guess we should bring it down to if you have people depending on you and they can't absorb that risk of you having these, having to build your own customer base and build your own financial stability, then you should get maybe you should look into a 32 BJ position.
Right.
And then you get your pension at the end of, I think it's so many years that you've been working for them.
Right. And if you're 1099, you just do it by yourself. It's more like, are you providing the insurance to yourself, or is if someone's providing it for you?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you're choosing your own insurance and providing it to yourself.
That's a great way to think of it. Yeah, it's like you have the choice, so you have more choices when you work on your own.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I think
yeah. Also, if you make more money, you will have more money in your retirement account. Just save it.
Oh, well,
versus
they do.
just depending on the pension.
Well, I think they also, one of the benefits that I forgot to mention is that 32 BJ offers 401k.
Yeah, but you can do IRAs.
Yeah, by yourself. Yeah, I guess you can. They do it for you, but I guess you could do it on your own as well.
Yeah, and also if you have your own business, there are different IRA options. Something called SEP IRA, and there's Roth IRA, traditional IRA. There are more options. You know, government do care about 1099.
Wow, that's interesting. I thought that they totally didn't want them. Okay.
And there are different ways you can use these financial, I wouldn't say tools, but these things. Like if you're your own business, you can expense things.
Right. So you're saying that even as a 1099, there's financial.
Yeah, and you can be secured by the government until your retirement.
Right. So you're not left out on your own if you're 1099. I'm always thinking that generally it's skewed against the 1099. But if there's options out there that help them, for instance, like if there's IRAs or other financial products that can help 1099 in a way that makes it, you know, comparable to a W-2 employee, or what's available to a W-2 employee, then what matters is how diligent you are in finding these out as a 1099.
Yeah.
And using those things to help you leverage the playing field when it comes to the basic benefits.
Exactly. You might end up saving more money than, especially in your retirement, even if you are 1099.
Right.
Just be smart about it. If you do some research, there's so much information out there.
Right.
And also, what could be it could be more benefits. Like just, you know, we never think that these big companies will never go wrong, right?
Right. Of course, they're too big to fail.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
You think I'm not trying to say any conspiracy theories or there's going to be any crisis. But it is possible that, like a huge institution that you trusted for a long time, it, one day it just collapses. You've seen it in these financial crises.
Yeah,
10
we've seen
years
them
ago.
20 years ago,
Yeah.
Enron. Yeah, but
The
I think
bank went bankrupt, so you can't trust anyone, but you can trust yourself. So
I don't know if I can trust myself.
I mean, like,
No, I know what you mean. You're saying that if you are a person that has confidence,
yeah,
and
in you,
and you have the
and
ability to think things out,
yeah, you believe in yourself.
and maybe with a little push, because maybe all of us just need a little push to become a little bit more of like an open thinker, because you got to be an open thinker to be able to succeed
Yeah,
there,
and you gotta be proactive. You can't be lazy.
right? But then again, there's those of us. There are people I know that are comfortable in their thing. I guess you're saying that there's a risk in everything.
Yeah, there's
But-
risk in everything.
right.
There is, like, even if you get a 32BJ job, it doesn't mean the risk is zero.
Right. But
You
I mean,
never know.
absolutely. But, and also, I mean, if something happens to you on the job
Yeah.
and you can't work anymore, that's a risk as well. So I think all of us have our own idea of what we can take on as risk, right? So, but I think in that case, your everything, if everything becomes risky, it's all about just what's less risky to you,
Yeah.
or what do you want more. And when I was 20, I think we all have a bigger desire for risk. As we get older, we want less risk in our lives. Yeah, I think these are important questions, especially nowadays when there's so much uncertainty.
Right.
There's less job security out there. People move from job to job. I think with globalization and with, as Albert mentioned in the other podcast, like with globalization and manufacturing jobs move on, and we're in the service industry, and there's a lot more people that may be coming into our industry, competing for the same jobs. There's a lot of question as to which direction to go, and I think it's just too much information for the average person. So they go into things that they think will be more secure, like 32BJ jobs. And if you're in a W2BJ job, but you want to try it out, you can still do it. You can still, I mean, there's so many people in the 32BJ position that whether it's a porter or a handyman that's actually has side gigs as a part-time super.
Oh, that's another thing too.
So-
32BJs, even if you're W2, you can take on some of the part-time jobs as 1099, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just not with that employer, because then that employer is responsible for the hours. He's responsible to pay more for the hours that he works for you.
Right.
But if you're looking to get the side gig in a different, with a different employer, with a different boss, by all means, you should definitely go for it. I think part-time buildings make fantastic side income for supers or porters or handyman whose primary job is in a 32BJ full-time position. There's nothing that says you can't do both. That's why it's one of the great things to see is when for me to get is someone that has a full-time 32BJ position email me or call me and say, hey, look, I want to get into the part-time building business. How do I do that? How can I do that? What's the best way? And then I go into, well, find a building that's close to your building. Don't travel far. Don't go to Queens
Right.
if you're in Manhattan, and especially if you live in Bronx, and
Yeah.
now you're doing
Oh my
a
goodness.
tri-borough commute. Don't do that. Don't underbid where you're losing money.
Yeah.
Those are the earlier podcast becomes important.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're, I mean, if you have a 32 BJ position and you're losing money from nobody wants to lose money, but let's say you're not making money from your part-time super buildings. Now look, it's not as bad as if all of your buildings are part-time buildings and you're not making any money. At least you're making money from your 32 BJ and you're
Right.
getting the benefits. Look, if you lose a couple dollars at your part-time, I hate to see that, but if you do it, it's not as bad as if you are fully in the part-time super business and you're making all the wrong choices.
Mm-mm-mm.
Listen to the previous episodes
Mm-hmm.
because I think our goal here is to try to, no matter which type of person you are now and what type of job you have, part-time supering is a great business if you do it right.
Yeah.
We don't want you to go into that, even if you have a great, secure job as a 32 BJ employee. We still don't want you to lose money or make little money as a part-time super if you don't have to. But for those of you who want a full-time, they want a full part-time building career. So all they want to do is part-time buildings.
Mm-hmm.
All they do is part-time buildings, like Albert, and like some other people that we know, like also is he was offered a 32 BJ position and he turned it down to be just to be a full-time part-time super, and I asked him why, and from what I could gather, he loved the freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And he liked the freedom of being able, and also loved to be able to make more money. He was able to make upwards of, for some jobs, multiples of what he could make as a W-2,
Yeah.
with a W-2 hourly rate. He was able to make multiples of that per hour as a part-time super. The only thing is, though, trying to, lining those jobs up so that you're always getting,
Mm-hmm.
You're getting a lot of those hours. That's a tough thing.
And you gotta pace yourself.
You got to pace yourself, because if you can't do that, then if you're dependent upon that, you really have to, organize, coordinate that well, schedule those jobs, and make your time efficient. So I think one of the things I love about what we do is, as Spark Super, is that we're able to help part-time supers coordinate their jobs so that they do it more efficiently. He's able to do those jobs at a time that works out for him.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a rewarding thing to be able to do that, because in this business, as a 1099 independent contractor, time is money.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about it for
Yeah.
me. I mean, there's much more here to talk about, but I thought that maybe we could
I think we
talk
we
about the
covered,
basic trade-off.
Yeah, I think we covered the general ideas, and I think most important things, like what kind of person you are.
Yeah, what kind of person you are, you're always going to evolve.
Yeah, and
And
you might change.
You're going to change.
You might
One
think.
person to the other.
Yeah, today I might think 32 BJ is the right thing for me, and then 5 years later, you might regret that, and
Right.
vice versa.
So it's good to know. Always
Yeah.
have in your mind, as a human being who is in an industry where you're performing essential work, where you're performing valuable services to all the residents out there. You're in a field where they can't do without you. You have choices, and you have a lot of customers out there, and you have a lot of ways that you can jump in there and do what you want, but you just have to know your choices.
Right.
And you have to know what the pros and cons are going into that. And you always have to wake up wondering what's good for me today, and what's good for me today in a way that I don't want to regret it 15 years later. Right? Like if I'm 25, do I want to go out there and do this type of risky work as a 1099 or as a business person doing my own part-time buildings as a business operation? Do I want to do it now when I'm 25, or do I want to do it later when I'm 40? Or if I have a baby, how do I want to do it? Should I stay with my building as a 32 BJ and then maybe do some buildings on the side and learn how to do that? Learn how to do that well. So there's a lot of questions.
And don't be scared.
And don't be scared. In life, it can be scary, and it can be, it's not easy out there.
Yeah, it can be a ride.
Yeah, it can be a ride.
Come on, let's be positive here, man.
Okay. Well, on that note, have a great day, Jennifer. And it was a great conversation. I actually really hit a lot of points that I think you helped actually bring up a lot of points that these part-time supers and people want to go into the business want to know, and that I wouldn't have brought up if you didn't bring up.
Oh,
So thank you.
you.
Yeah.